All right. Hello. Thanks for joining us today's Cannabis and Tech Talks. My name is Andrew Ward. I am the new managing editor at Cannabis and Tech today. So I appreciate you coming along for the ride, as well as my host today, CEO and founder of Sorting Robotics, Nohtal Partansky. Nohtal is a NASA-backed tech expert who is leading a company that is helping build the future of hardware and software in the cannabis industry. Nohtal, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
Thanks, Andrew. Doing all right.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I know you guys have got a lot of exciting developments, and we also just want to dive into sorting robotics for the folks who don't know about it at home. So, if you kind of can you kick us off a little bit about yourself as well as sorting robotics? How did you and the company come together or come about to this point?
Sure. Let's see. So back in the day, I used to work at NASA JPL. I worked on a bunch of projects there, but the most popular one was a device that is currently producing oxygen on the surface of Mars called MOXIE. And through that process, I met a bunch of people, learned a bunch of things, and then eventually wanted to start my own robotics company. And that is what kind of caused me to start this one back in 2018. And so we spent the first 2 years really just working in a completely different industry, doing e-commerce robotics, inventory management, stuff like that. And then in 2020, we moved our focus to the cannabis sector because I had a few friends that were running cannabis companies here in California. And they're like, dude, we need help. Just build something. And I liked weed and I liked robots. And so it seemed like a pretty good match. And we initially started I partnered with a few people to make a co-packing company. And then that's where I kind of learned the ins and outs of the industry, like trimming and packaging and buying, selling quality product, and then use that information to uh, help push sorting into the right direction in terms of building robots for cannabis manufacturers. And that's like the short, high-level story of how we got here. And we've been doing it for the past 4 years and have a bunch of customers ever since.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for elaborating on there. And for folks who don't know, NASA JPL is for the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Can you kind of touch on what kind of work? Obviously, you were saying some of the projects you're on, but what was that kind of like work entail for NASA? I think that that's such a big beast that a lot of people would never kind of wrap their head around what actually goes on inside of that company. What was your day to day and your projects like?
Oh, at NASA? Well, I was the cognizant engineer for the SOXY subassembly inside of the MOXIE project. So what that means is I was responsible for the cradle to grave development and production of the heart of this instrumentation that was going to go on the Martian rover. And it was quite interesting. So I guess day to day was talking to a bunch of suppliers, talking to a bunch of the experts on the NASA campus, um, getting the different parts of the subsystems and management to kind of talk together, and then eventually doing testing and integration and building. It did vary quite a bit over the 4 years that I was there.
It sounds like a little bit like a much more high level intergalactic version of everyone else's day to day. Would that be right?
Yeah, it was like everyone else's day to day, except you just can't make mistakes because then they cost like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So yeah.
And what about, and you said you were a fan of cannabis and you're a fan of robots. Did you ever think that you were going to make the jump from NASA type work, working with in Mars and space, to working in the cannabis space?
I actually tried to do that when I was working at JPL. So I started in JPL in early 2015, and I had already started another company, so I knew I wanted to start another company after that, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I had a friend in 2017 who started selling terpenes. And even before then, when I was in grad school and Colorado and Washington became legal, I was like, damn, like what can I do in this industry? I'm like, I don't know if there's anything for me to do. And then when my friend got into it, he was on like the formulation side. He wasn't really on the manufacturing side. So I still was like, damn, what do I do? And the reason why our first product was targeted towards e-commerce was because that was something that I knew really well. And this industry, like we made a machine that sorted Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh cards for e-commerce sellers. And so I was really into Magic the Gathering, and so I knew that industry, and so I built something for that company and industry that I knew. But I kept thinking, like, what do I do? And it's such an interesting thing to work on, and it was so new, and I mean, it still is really new. Um, so I always was thinking of what to do, but I didn't have any exposure because it was so opaque to me. And I didn't really know anyone who was actually building things at the time. And then after a couple of years of running the company, I met a few other business owners that were doing things in a whole bunch of different industries, and then some of them were doing them in cannabis. And then when I was able to look top down, I could see a lot of the problems, and then that allowed me to make relationships and then actually like live through the problems. And so then now I could actually like know the industry because I kind of was in the industry. Like I started a infused pre-roll brand, and it was on Ease and a bunch of these other dispensaries and stuff. So like I was in it, right? And I think I wanted to do something in it because I saw that it was very interesting and it was just like nascent, but I didn't really know anything about it until eventually I kind of was able to look top down, and then I like walked my way into it.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad we're glad we're here to have you in there. Obviously, great minds coming into the space is what we need. Like you said, you had worked on some other companies that you launched in the past. I believe one of them was acquired by eBay. Was that right?
Yeah, so that was the first product that I was talking to you about, this device that sorted trading cards.
Yes.
So that was the first company or first product line, I guess, that this company worked on. And then we worked on it for a couple of years, and then we sold it to a group of investors, and then those investors sold it to a much bigger trading card marketplace. And then eBay bought that trading card marketplace. And so now, if you like roll it all the way back, this piece of technology that we built in my living room back when I was working at JPL is now the backend infrastructure for eBay's trading card fulfillment arm, which is kind of
Ah,
cool.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so how does it just compare? Those sort of industries to moving into the cannabis space. How did it start? Was the entrepreneur journey very similar? Was there a lot of unique differences? How's it been for you so far, and especially in the early on stages?
Let's see. I think the first company I started was a desktop 3D printing company, and it was more focused as like a B2C company. And then when we did the trading cards, that was very much B2B. Like I made a very strong focus to go B2B because I think the value propositions are usually much more clear when it's B2B as opposed to B2C when it's just cool or something like that. And yeah, so that was very similar to kind of what we do now, where I think articulating the value proposition to our potential customers is has a ton of overlap, but the biggest difference I think was the machines that we sold to the e-commerce space were, tens of thousands of dollars, and then the machines that we're selling in the cannabis space are like hundreds or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's just the difference in terms of like how many people it can replace, because the machine we made before would replace two or three people. The machines we make now can replace 10 or 15 people. And I think that was one of the biggest changes, as well as like banking and just like understanding the cannabis industry as a whole. It's much less well defined. The other industries I was in, it was very well defined. It was like, this is what people were doing for the past 10 years. And then we came in and actually disrupted it. But this industry, it's so young, you're not really disrupting anything, right? You're
Yeah.
just building the foundation of how to do
Yeah.
it.
You're in one
Yeah.
giant startup space, I always like to tell people.
Yeah, it's very much like everyone's trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's a lot of trial and error, and really trying to figure it out. I think one of the big things that's really interesting is the shift towards automation. Obviously, it's not just exclusive to cannabis, but like you said, that the robots and the robotics are taking the people off the force and moving into more efficiency with the robots. What has been kind of the market reaction to that? I know a lot of folks are concerned already about some turnover in the cannabis space with jobs outside of your functions. What's been the kind of the feedback on it from the I guess the worker as well as the C-suite?
I mean, everyone's pretty stoked. So one thing that people don't really seem to fully kind of grasp in manufacturing in the United States is that the population in the United States doesn't want to do manufacturing. like anywhere. I mean, maybe there's like some coal mines or something in like Tennessee or wherever the coal mines are. But people don't really want to do those jobs. And because cannabis is a hyper fragmented market, right? You're talking 35 separate markets in these different states. It's not like you can focus all the manufacturing in one part of the country that's okay with doing that type of stuff. No, you have to have manufacturing in like downtown LA, right? And that's
Right.
not really a manufacturing place, and you don't really have the same culture that you might have in the coal mining area, right? Or the ironworks of downtown Michigan or something like that. So it's very different. And we're not really like taking people's jobs. We're just putting efficiencies in the place of lack of workforce. So no one's really getting fired. And I don't think I've been to any of the 100 plus customers that we've sold over the past few years. And they've said, oh, great, now I'm going to fire, 50 employees. No, that's not at all what happens. It's like, oh, great, now we're going to have those employees do something that they actually want to do, like talk to customers more, or maybe be a bit more efficient in terms of the logistics and the planning side of things, the more creative side of things. So
So
no
it's a lot
one,
more of a reallocation of talents than it is any sort of concerns over job loss.
yeah, like no one has any job loss. There's so much attrition that people buy the machines and they just everyone's happier. Like,
Well,
yeah,
that's good. That's a good side. I mean, that's the thing. I think that automation and all that stuff. Some people get afraid of it, but there is just a natural shift in some ways to it. And as long as, like you said, you're not meeting the people that are eager to fire people and can jobs, I think then you're kind of heading in the right direction.
yeah,
And also too, if you do know any cannabis companies that do seem eager to fire people, please feel free to let us know about those. Those are the ones we want to put on blast a little bit.
sure.
Uh, but no, I appreciate you elaborating on that. I know that with tech, it's very it's still a concern, obviously, to some people out there, but obviously it's something that we're all going to need to embrace, especially in a nascent space like cannabis. Like you said, we're still trying to form the processes, and like you said, a lot of companies are even struggling trying to form consistency, especially as being like a multi-state brand, like you're saying. So like having to establish those consistencies and those functions in markets that aren't always the most conducive to it. It seems like it's an essential part of the business at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And the cannabis plant itself is the most inconsistent thing because it hasn't been matured. It just hasn't matured, right? If you look at every agricultural industry kind of ever, there used to be thousands and thousands of species that were bred, and now there's like one banana, right? Or two bananas. And there were hundreds of different corns, and now there's like one corn. And there are a bunch of different carrots, and now there's like two carrots, right? Eventually, as much as people will kind of fight against this idea, there will come a time when cannabis is fully commercialized, and at least in North America, they'll have these like dominant things. I don't know. Maybe they'll be Blue Dream will be the next basic flavor or basic strain. But I would say most most things are going to become fully commoditized, and it's going to become CPG. And with that comes a pretty deep understanding of like consistency and trying to breed in consistency and leave those kind of top shelf, unique, exotic strains for what they are, like unique, exotic strains and top shelf pieces, as opposed to everyone always try to do everything new all the time, because it's very difficult to get consistency when you have one strain being grown indoor, mixed light, and outdoor. It's just it's not even the same. The phenotype is completely different, right?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's such a different process, and you are creating different plants. Wonder, do you see that being then kind of like at some point that the craft market will eventually kind of fade away? Do you see it as that point when they start becoming that more homogenized, consistent cannabis, or do you still see like a craft market still being around?
No, dude, the craft market will always come around.
Okay.
I think it's probably going to turn into like beer, right? You're going to have the Budweisers, which is like Blue Dream, I guess, and Sour Diesel or something like that. And then you're going to have the local craft breweries, and then you're going to have these kind of mid-market guys like the Dogfish Heads of the world, or like the Abita or whatever, where it's, maybe not widely distributed, maybe they don't have as much manufacturing, but they kind of bridge that gap. And each of those different segments will have different business models, right? And they'll have different gross margins, and everything will be very, I feel like, beer and wine-esque. Because wine is also like super fragmented, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I think it's going to be somewhere in between those two.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like going down the rabbit hole of how the wine industry and interstate shipping of weed and other laws and regulations could be a whole area we could explore on another time. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's such a nuanced area, and I think like like you said, it's so much that we're still trying to figure it out at this point. And you really need to have as a company a solid team around you to make sure that you are leading the right team and building the right products and hitting the market as you need to. What was the team structure like for you when you started coming out? Was it you and a small team when sorting started out, or what was the team like, and how has it grown since then?
When we first started, well, it was just me and my co-founders. So me and one of my friends from grad school were the two initial co-founders. We were working at NASA together, and then we brought on our third co-founder very quickly after we had the idea to help, and that was Cassio. And the three of us worked together on the first product for, man, I would say the first year just by ourselves, just us three. And we deployed like, I think 7 or 8 machines, just us three,
Wow.
design and build and sell and deploy. And then in the second year, for like the first half of the year or the first 2/3 of that year, it was just us and like one technician that we found who was like this old like machinist guy who had already retired. And he's just like, I want to work like 3 days a week and kind of like help you guys out a little bit. You don't really need to pay me. Just give me, 30, $40 an hour. I'll be fine. I was all right, cool,
Sure.
Yeah, and he kind of like did his best, and he was really great. And then once we raised money, kind of focus after cannabis, then we became a bit more precise, and we went to 6 people, and then we were at 6 people for, I would say, the next probably 2 years, 6 or 7 people for the next 2 years, as we started to build that first product line called the Gico, which is the system that does the injection of infusion. So we kind of pioneered that technology in the cannabis market. The whole, like, I guess they call it injectables SKU now. That was like us, like
That was
out of
you.
Oakland, infusing joints for my customers. Joints, and then we made the Gico robot, and then now like it's become a bit more prolific, and there's a bunch of like competitor products which are not as good, might I add. But yeah, and so then I would say it was like that, and then we went, I would say last year, to 9, 10 people. And then once we launched Stardust at the end of last year, which is like the keef coating system to make like Jeter style joints. And then we started selling our pre-roll manufacturing system called the Aura One, as we distribute with the Hephaestus guys. And now we're at 18 people. And that's been over the past, 9 months, we've gone from 12 to 18 people. And that's mostly on the backs of the fact that we went from selling one thing to selling 3 things. And we've kind of crossed that bridge where we're at like, 100 machines plus deployed. So it's kind of like a lot of things going on these days. And yeah, I would say it's been like a kind of growth steps. It hasn't really been very linear. It's been like months and months of flat. And then when something changes on the sales side, it's like, okay, cool. Now it's time to go.
Right, right. Yeah, I've not seeing it from the robotic side, but just seeing from the startup side. I feel like you go one way or the other, and that rapid ascension could sometimes bite you. It feels like going in that other direction, like you were mentioning. It's kind of more on the as need and grow as you need, and you get where you need to be.
Yeah, it is a little bit stressful on the team though, because then that means you're running for, 3, 4 months, like very short staffed, right? And so I try to balance that out, but you do what you can.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We understand it. As you said, the whole cannabis space, whoever's listening is probably in the same shoes if even if working in a completely different product. And the reason why I brought all that up is because you guys announced recently a pretty big acquisition once again from your background in NASA. What was it? Patrick DeGrosse Jr. is the new director of engineering. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. He joined us, I guess, a month ago at this point. Yeah.
Nice. And what is Patrick bringing to the table with the company? Obviously, with his job title, we kind of have an idea, but if you can kind of elaborate on who he is and where what he's bringing to the table for sorting.
Yeah, so Patrick ran the mobility. He was the mechanical lead for the mobility system on 2020, and he also worked on that team, I think, in the Coggy role in not Perseverance, in MSL. So what that means is the little wheels. I don't know that you've seen the Mars rovers. They have 6 wheels on either side, and there's like this Rocky Boger sort of suspension system.
Mhm.
So he was the one responsible for delivering that whole system to the rover on Perseverance.
Oh wow.
And yeah, at least on the mechanical side. So he's no, he's great. And he also has had a lot of experience working with my former boss at JPL, and I know a few people that know him as well. And I actually didn't know him when I was at JPL. I like kind of heard his name, but he was in a different section than me and in like a different floor of the building. And so there's never really a overlap with us. But no, he's cut from the same cloth. And he brings like 20 years of JPL experience and just an exceptional mindset for thinking through problems, managing teams around complex problems, and that's what he's going to be doing here. Right? So he's going to become, or he is the director of engineering, and he's helping at a kind of low level solve some of the initial problems that we're kind of working out in terms of bugs, and then he's going to just be managing this whole production and R&D cycle for everything that we do in the cannabis industry and everything after that. So it's a good use of his skills.
Very cool. Very cool. And does that mean we're going to be seeing more additions coming on after him, or do you think that that's going to be it for the time being for you guys?
Oh, for the 18, yeah, I think there's still a couple people that we need. We need another SDR, and then we'll probably need another installation technician just because of all the machines that we've been selling, and probably a marketing person. That's actually a big thing. We've kind of been splitting the roles in the sales team in terms of like doing like random marketing stuff, but we need someone kind of dedicated to that. I think after that, once we get to 1920, I'll probably freeze it at least till the end of the year and then kind of see how the team goes and kind of that step function that we talked about. Because after then, you have a lot of the team has a tendency to breathe, right? And then we have the production catch up with the sales, and then the sales catch up with the production, and then you kind of reevaluate. And I think that's the
Of
best way to go about it.
recalibration time.
Yeah, yeah. And it takes a long time to get the team to like really start working together. I would say when we did our last kind of surge where we hired 4 or 5 people at once, it took like 6 months at least for them to really all start to be clicking.
Mm,
I think that would probably be a little bit more accelerated now because there's more people, so there's more momentum on how to do things than
gotcha.
before when we didn't even really know how to do stuff, and then there was even less people and less momentum. So I don't know, we'll see how it goes.
Still figuring out, but now you got more people to help figure it out.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that really helps.
Cool. And they didn't ask me to do this, but hey, if anybody's watching this and you are interested in any of those jobs that sorting mentioned, feel free to reach out to them. I don't know if that's what you guys are looking for, but just
Yeah,
saying.
I guess
Saying you
this is
heard it
now
on
a
the pod.
recruiting podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, Nohtal, I obviously want to dive in a lot more on this, but I know that we want to keep it a little bit short today and always bring it back for the future here. So I kind of want to just bring it up, just kind of wrap it up here. This podcast is going to be going out probably in May, so we're really close to the second half of the month by the time that, or second half of the year by the time this podcast comes out. What is on Sorting's radar for the back half of 2024? What can we be on the lookout for?
I would say a proliferation of the Stardust platform. That's going to be a big thing. You'll start seeing a lot more people that are making all their Keef joints completely automated, and there'll be a lot more kind of install videos on our Instagram and stuff like that of future customers. I think that's going to be a big thing, and I wonder what that's actually going to do in terms of that SKU, because already so many people produce it and it seems like it's like a staple SKU. And when you introduce a tool like this, you have a tendency to kind of see weird things that happen. Sometimes like end consumer pricing drops because now it doesn't cost an operator, 20 or 30 cents to make it. It costs them like 3 or 4 cents to make it. It's a huge drop, right? And
Absolutely.
so then people tend to do it more, right? If it's so much easier to do, then let's do more. And then if it's so much easier to do and let's do more, it becomes cheaper. It lowers the barrier to entry to that product and that SKU. And then sometimes you see a lot more innovation come out of the brands because they now are no longer stressing out about having 40 people specifically doing this one thing. They get to like actually branch out. So it'll be interesting to see what that does. I would like to kind of clue in again in 6 months time and say, oh yeah, these 5 or 6 companies had this machine and now they're doing all these other things, right, which will be kind of cool.
Yeah, well, come on back anytime and give us an update.
All right,
But
cool.
you kind of touched on a number there already. Do you have like a KPI or like a milestone of where you would like to be at the end of the month? Like how many brands are working with Stardust?
I would say at the end of the year, we're looking to have 25 to 30 brands on the Stardust kind of train, and we'll probably double that next year.
Very cool. Well, all the best to you guys on that. One thing I always love to do is turn it over to you. Obviously, there's a ton more to talk about, but just in this sort of track around the team and the growth of sorting and your future and the look ahead, is there anything that we haven't gotten the listeners to talk about just yet that you think they should be aware of?
I mean, I think that's pretty good. Yeah, I guess another plug, right? If you guys
Yeah. Oh, we that was going to be coming up next, but yeah, we got
okay, yeah.
that.
Yeah, I guess yeah, like it's if you want to work here, if you're interested in the space and you're interested in tech, reach out to um sales at Sorting Robotics and then we'll kind of see what's up.
Yeah, and are you guys active on social media? Anywhere they should be following you on social?
Yeah, Instagram. So Instagram is Sorting Robotics Inc. That's it.
Cool. Well, be sure to
Yeah.
check him out. Give him a follow if you haven't already. Nohtal Partansky, CEO and founder of Sorting Robotics. I really appreciate you taking the time and being the first person of my era on the podcast here. I've got some big shoes to fill from Patricia Miller, and I think I got a little bit to work with, but I appreciate you being so patient with it, and I hope the listeners were as well. Thank you all for joining us today as Cannabis and Tech Talks. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, my name is Andrew Ward, signing off. Thank you so much.